and she walked out. And the school remains today the Walaza Junior Secondary School. The lessons I would like to share with you, coming from that story and others, is that there is a huge difference when women lead as women. I want to stress that. I think women get into positions of power and they dress like men and they behave like men. And often what they engage in is what we call in my country a PhD syndrome, pull head down syndrome. My grandmother, without knowing it, taught me that women have to learn to speak truth to power with respect and dignity. You speak truth to power, but often people don't hear you. And I'm a psychologist, I know you've got to speak with respect and dignity. As a trauma counselor, I've learned that it is important to listen intently to every person, as you never know where your most important lesson in life will come from. I know that we all have these quotes by famous people, but what taught me resiliency is when I looked after a woman whose eyes were gouged out in the conflict between the Xhosas and the Zulus in Johannesburg, in South Africa. And this woman came to me and she couldn't see. And I looked after her. I saw her week after week with her little child, who sometimes, because she couldn't see me, I worked through these little two eyes, which sometimes were sparkly when things were good, and I knew we were getting to some point. And when the child looked needly and wasn't happy, I knew things were bad. And often this woman would say, if there's conflict in the township where she lived in the middle of the night, she would stumble out of a shack and just go. And then she would be called the next day to say, your child was found here. And one time, I remember as a psychologist, we often are told, this is a lesson you've got to learn, especially from a Western notion of psychology, that you don't give money to clients or patients. And I remember sitting with this woman, and she yanked out her breast, and he says, there's nothing here. I can't feed this child. And she was in tears. And I just had visions of my little wallet with money in it. And I thought, what do I do? Do I go the Western way and not give her the money? Or do I simply just pick up the phone an agency and say, can you please help me? And then say to her, oh, they're going to give me 100 rands. Here, go and buy yourself some milk for the baby and some bread to eat for the night. I opted to be an African and did what was right. The work that I do also has taught me to humble myself, to realize that if I walk in situations with an attitude that I know it all, then I lose the plot. I've worked in Kosovo, I've worked in Palestine, I've worked in Northern Ireland with the Archbishop on a project called Facing the Truth, but I always know that I've got to walk into that situation with a clear mind that I know nothing until somebody tells me something. I know absolutely nothing. I walk in with a blank slate, with my knowledge, but knowing that I need to learn from the people. I need to humble myself, that my education, the fact that I'm educated, doesn't entitle me to think that I can solve everybody's problem. I humble myself as I work with trauma victims to the realization that being invited into somebody's traumatic journey is an honor of no proportion. I feel honored today, but I feel honored every day when I have to walk with a 14-year-old through her journey of being sodomized and left to dead near the Cape Town International airport, where she was discovered by a man, and she came to see me with her grandmother. I've never seen a beautiful smile. And I still today try to remember where she is, whether she was able to suture herself, to heal her wound, and to be a woman after she was ravaged, sodomized, raped, and left with everything hanging in the middle of the night, naked. And I humble myself to the fact that it is only because people care that they would let anybody into that intimate detail. I humble myself to realize that when I see 3-year-olds with glossy eyes, frozen tears, who have been raped and sexually assaulted and can't articulate what has happened to them, that I mustn't take that for granted. It is vital that you be aware of the context in which you operate so as not to run the risk of alienating the very people you want to assist. When I walk into my community, helping my own people, I often feel that it's almost like I have to learn to drum in order to be able to be in unison. Because I've learned psychology in a Western context. I think English. Therefore, I am English in my operation. So I have to think very carefully about learning. So I say this because somebody said you must travel the world. As you travel the world, you need to be aware of the context in which you operate and never, ever assume because you're a great American that you're bringing something. Always remember that you are given something. It's a great gift that our people will receive you with honor, because that's what they do with visitors. The other thing that I think hasn't been said here tonight, which I'd like to emphasize because this has been my greatest learning, is that we cannot empower women to work for the work that we all have worked on without empowering the men that they live with. This has been a great lesson for me because you empower women, you tell them they can go and open their own bank, they could do this and this and this. They come back tomorrow with a blue eye and you wonder why, because somebody has said, you think you know better than me? I'm going to tell you who plays the guitar in this house. So please, whatever you do, make sure that you empower men, you empower those who work with young women, you empower the young men, because we need to do that. When I was a first-year student at the University of Cape Town in 1983, and I was the first black psychologist to graduate from the University of Cape Town, I was told when I got into my first class of psychology that black students do not pass Psychology 1 on their first year at the University of Cape Town. And I remember asking my aunt to go and check my results, and when she told me that I had passed Psychology 1, I said, that is all I need to know. The rest is history. I never thought in my wildest dream, dear sisters, that I will be here today receiving an award and being acknowledged for the contribution that I have made, the little contribution that I have made to humanity thus far. Men and women of my country say, Umtu gumtu ngabantu. You are who you are because of others. I am because you are. You are because I am. Peace be with you and good night.